Hello and welcome to Business Loan Scotland. I'm Andrew Dixon, Fund Manager. We provide loans from £25,000 up to £100,000 to new and growing businesses across the whole of Scotland. We're looking to support your business with loan finance to help you realise your dreams and aspirations for your business, whether it's a startup or whether you are trying to grow your business. All the information that you'll need you'll find on our website, but I'm delighted to introduce Ian McDonald. Ian is a consultant who has helped many businesses access funding from Business Loan Scotland, and Ian will take us through the key areas that you need to be able to consider and cover off when making an application to ourselves. Finally, I hope this information will be helpful to you in completing your application, and we look forward to hearing from you in due course.
Hi there, I'm Ian. And as Andrew has just said, I've been fortunate to work with many businesses, helping them through the BLS loan application process. And I think for me, the purpose of this little video today is really just to share with you some insights and some tips as to how to navigate your way through this process. But I think, right at the outset, one of the things I'd like to share with you is, firstly, this isn't a big, cumbersome, heavyweight process. It's actually very user-friendly. You'll find that once you get into the website and the portal itself, that it's a very intuitive process. It's quite self-explanatory. And above all, I think behind the scenes, it's important to say that the team at BLS are very friendly, very helpful, and are looking to give your business the funding that it needs. So, before we get into the process itself, I think one key message that I always like to share with businesses is to make sure we're prepared, make sure that we've done all our homework, that we've got all the information ready that we need. Clearly, you are going through a loan application process, so making sure that we're as prepared as possible, we're as fit as possible, and that we're in a position to make your loan application look as attractive and as bankable as possible. Okay, so the first part of the process is to complete a fairly simple, user-friendly inquiry form. You log on to the BLS website, you tell them who you are, what your company is, what the legal status is, whether it's a limited company, sole trade, partnership, whatever. Populate a little bit of narrative, just a very short couple of paragraphs to describe what your business is, what you do, and why you're looking for BLS support, and also to confirm to them how much money you're asking for. It's as simple as that, and once that part of the process is completed, very soon thereafter you'll receive an email saying that your full application has now been activated and that we're good to go. Okay, so now that we are into the site and we're ready to start completing the process, I think my input would be to consider the approach here in sort of 4 key areas. The first is that you're going to be asked for some very simple information. So there's lots of data and information that we need to populate as we go through the process, and that will take care of itself as you work through the system. So all fairly straightforward, all easy to do, just you completing various aspects of the site and imparting some key information. So the second part for me is about telling the story. This is your opportunity to articulate as clearly as you can what your business is about, where it's come from, where it is today, what your opportunities are going ahead, what challenges you might be facing. But in other words, this is your opportunity to sell your business and to explain to the team at BLS why you merit their support. So the third key component part for me, you won't be surprised to know, is all about the numbers. It's all about the financial story. And I know sometimes we can all get a bit bogged down or worried or concerned about how we can present financial information. But clearly, as part of the storytelling, the underlying objective is to clearly demonstrate to the team at BLS the underlying viability of your business model, where its profits will come from, how its cash flow will work, and why this is a business that should merit their support. And so the fourth key point is that you'll see in the system that you're required to complete what's called a personal statement. Very straightforward. The system will chat you through the various questions that you need to complete. It is just literally your own personal information, and it's completed by you signing off a declaration making various statements. So really straightforward. Okay, so now we've been into the system, we've familiarised ourselves with the process, we know the information that we're going to be asked to complete. I think one of the key areas, needless to say, is the request for a business plan. And as I've already suggested, this is the storytelling part. This is your opportunity to demonstrate why your business merits BLS support. Now again, the good news is this doesn't need to be war and peace. It's a simple process. We want nice, succinct information that talks us through the kind of component parts of you telling your business's story. Now for me, that often would start off just with a very basic introduction. So this is who we are as a business, this is what we do, this is how long we've been established, this is where we're based, this is how many people we employ, and this is how much money we need to fund our project. And of course, within that request for funding, how much of your total funding package are you asking BLS to contribute to? So now we've given a little summary introduction. The next area that I would tend to go to is just giving a little bit more detail in the story, a little bit more background. So what's the history of the business? Where did it start? What sort of products or services is it delivering? How has it grown over the years? Where is it today? What type of customer base is it looking after? And what sort of opportunities lie ahead for the business? So now that we've given a little bit of summary introduction and we've given a bit of background, it's logical that we now move on to talking about our products and services and those customers we serve. Now, every business clearly operates in different types of services and has different types of businesses. So clearly what you're trying to do is to show what type of customers you are looking after, which market sectors they might operate in, and how you deliver your products or services to each of those customer groups. So we've now spoken a little bit about customers, our markets, what we do, how we serve those markets, etc. The next kind of logical step for me, and a step that BLS will want you to articulate for them, is how do you promote the business? How do you actually win your customers? So in other words, what's your sales process and what's your marketing process? How do you make yourself visible to your customer base? How do you promote yourself? And what is the sales process itself? And one other area that you might want to just consider is, do you have any competitors out there, any obvious competitors that BLS might be aware of? So in other words, it's an opportunity for you to really explain your USP, really let them know why, if there are competitors in your marketplace, that you can continue to successfully win adequate market share to make your business viable. And so maybe one final part of this storytelling of the presentation of your business plan, particularly relevant in a young business, might be to give a little bit of background in terms of your personal experience or the experience of your key team, just to give BLS the confidence that you are in a market that you understand, you're experienced in, and that you can successfully deliver it. So now that we've done all the storytelling part, we move on to, I guess, the financial area, which, as you can well understand, is a key component of the BLS loan application process. Before we maybe get into that, I think it is just worth reminding ourselves that this is a loan that we're applying for. It's a loan that will be repaid over a period of up to 5 years, and that in certain circumstances, securities and/or guarantees may be taken. Typically, if you're borrowing up to £50,000, then BLS don't look to take any security position. But sometimes, depending on the circumstances, if we creep above that figure, then it may well take us into a requirement for securities or personal guarantees. So something to bear in mind, but obviously can be discussed with BLS team as you go through the process. Okay, so now we get into the core financial part of the process. And I think, something worth kind of flagging up straight away here is, quite often businesses need help in terms of presenting financial information. You may be fortunate, you might be the type of business that has internal financial personnel who can help prepare profit and loss projections, cash flow projections, balance sheet projections, and all that kind of good stuff. And if that's the case, great, use that resource clearly. However, many businesses don't have that internal discipline, and therefore your first port of call would probably be to your own accountant. Pick up the phone, have a chat with them, explain that you're looking to make a loan application and to seek their assistance in doing so. And one other thing that's maybe just worth mentioning is that we've got some great government agencies out there. We've got Scottish Enterprise, we've got Business Gateway, and all of the local authorities across the country also have economic development teams. So if you've got contacts, or even if you don't have contacts, pick up the telephone to any of these agencies, because they might just be able to identify a consultant who could support you, and in some instances perhaps even give you a little bit of grant contribution towards those costs. So definitely something worth looking at, and you'll find a lot of that information, these partner organisations listed on the BLS website. And so the other thing that I think's worth mentioning when it comes to examining our financial accounts and preparing financial projections, one of the things that I often get asked to do is someone might say, Ian, we're making a BLS loan application, can you help me knock up a set of projections, as it were? The bottom line here is that's not a good thing for you to do, is to have someone just knock up a set of projections. At the heart of this is a very important consideration that you need to make, and that is you need to be certain that this business plan and these financial projections that are being presented actually represent your own belief and understanding of the business. So in other words, these need to be your numbers. Make sure that you understand how these numbers have been prepared, because you're going to be asked questions about it. So you want to be able to be an integral part of understanding the underlying assumptions that have been used and how these projections have been built up to make your business case for you. And the other little thing I'd add is, in my language, make sure you sense check your numbers as well. So once the figures have been produced for you, just look at those and make sure that they pass the taste test, they pass the logical test, that it makes sense and these numbers do look realistic and achievable. So that's a really important thing to do as well. We don't want to present a set of projections that show you're turning over £250,000 today, and in 18 months' time you're going to be turning over £25 million. That people might have a number of questions to ask as to how that's possible. Once in a blue moon, a business might arise that's got that type of growth trajectory, but for most, we need to make sure that the underlying assumptions that we're doing are realistic, achievable, and believable. And so, one little technical point that I think I should highlight as well, and that is that as part of the process, you'll see that you're being asked to present your historic financial accounts alongside making financial projections available, as I've already said, profit and loss projections, cash flow projections, and balance sheet. And one of the issues is, the BLS system wants your projections, the timeline of your projections, to be consistent with your financial year end. So in other words, if your financial year end is 31st March, then we want your projections to be starting from 1st of April. Now that sometimes throws up a little bit of a consideration. So for instance, if you are month 3 of your current financial year, then probably what I suggest is that you'd want to use those first 3 months' actual figures as the starting point for your projections, and then project out the remaining 9 months of that financial year so that the projected period still covers over that full 12-month period and is consistent with your year end. And similarly, if you're 10 months into your year, then you might want to just project that last couple of months before then extending out a further couple of years projections beyond that. But from a BLS point of view, they very much want to see your projections timeline to be consistent with your financial year end. Okay, so enough about how we're going to approach the projections. Maybe let's just remind ourselves of the purpose of presenting your financial information and your projections. Firstly, and most importantly, it's to make you confident that your numbers work and that you're going to have enough money in the tank to deliver what you need your funding to deliver. Secondly, it's to demonstrate viability, the underlying viability to the BLS team, who are going to be making a lending decision based on what you're saying. So, is your profitability there? If we're not making profits in the early part of our journey, explain why that might be the case, what it takes to get the business to move into profit, and importantly, in terms of cash flow terms, and this is one of the key areas. It's one thing making money and generating profit. It's another thing making sure that we have enough cash in the tank, and that's why BLS do want you to present to them a cash flow projection. Now let's think about what goes into that cash flow projection. So if, for instance, you're looking to raise £120,000, 20,000 of that might come from you, £50,000 of that might come from a bank or from an HP provider if you're using asset finance, and the final £50,000 might come from BLS. So within your submission and within those cash flow projections, you're showing all component parts of the funding that you need to be articulated within that cash flow plan so that BLS can understand A, where your funding is coming from, and B, that you actually have enough cash in order to achieve your goals. And so, having put all this effort in and brought our figures together and we're happy with our business case, of course, the team at BLS again are going to have some questions about where your numbers have come from. So perhaps think about just a little summary of what your key underlying assumptions are. In other words, if you're taking your business from 200,000 turnover to 500,000 turnover, what might that mean in terms of your assumption of growth in number of customers, or what growth in transaction value there might be there? So in other words, rather than just saying our sales are going to go from X to Y, to be able to explain behind those numbers, how those numbers are made up, and that gives a lot of confidence to the BLS team that we've not just pulled figures out the air. Other considerations like seasonality. So your business might be quite spiky as it goes through a year. It could be that during the summer you're incredibly busy and during the winter you're very quiet, or it could be individual peak times during holiday times, etc. So whatever it is for you, if there is some seasonality in your business, make sure you've just explained what that looks like and why your numbers fluctuate over that period of time. And other things like product mix. So, is your product offering changing over the life of the projected period? So are you introducing a new product or service? Does that mean that you need to invest in more plant and equipment? Does that mean that your margins are going to change? So it could be that your historic performance looks very different to your future performance, and you just want to maybe kind of focus on explaining why those numbers might start to look a little bit different going forward. And then one final little detail, it is just a tiny little bit of detail, but perhaps important, and that is, think about inflation. So, our costs aren't going to stay the same for the next 3 years, so you might want to factor in a little bit of wage inflation, a little bit of cost inflation, etc., just so that that's seen through the financial model that you present to the BLS team. Small point, but worth paying attention to. All right, hopefully so far so good. Just a few other little bits and pieces to kind of pick up on. As I've already said on a couple of occasions, the website itself is very intuitive, very user-friendly, and you'll get used to it really quickly. So working your way through section by section, you can hop backwards and forwards between sections, so it's great that way. But look out for other little bits and pieces of information that are asked for. If you're in a leased property, for instance, BLS ask if you can give them a note of the heads of terms of your lease, so how long's unexpired, what you're paying, etc., etc. And also, you're asked to prepare a little organisational chart. So it doesn't need to be anything particularly complex. You know, if you are a large company that has quite a management structure in there with the managing director, finance director, production director, etc., then that's great. You know, explain all those in an organisation chart that you guys will be familiar with. If you're a much smaller business, then it can simply be, I am the owner at the top and I have 2 employees below and what their job functions are. So you don't need to get too hung up in that, but a little organisational chart is also requested. The other kind of areas are that as part of the process you'll need to upload a very recent bank statement. The main purpose of that actually is to make sure that your business does exist as the legal entity applying for the loan fund and that it has a bank account in that name. So simple process of uploading a recent bank statement. And the other thing is also aged debtors and aged creditors. So if you're not familiar with that, that's a kind of list of who do you owe money to and also a list of who owes money to you. So if you've got that available from your own systems, great. If not, it might be something you need to speak to your accountant about, but the BLS system asks you to upload the most recent aged debtors and aged creditors lists. And incidentally, when it comes to uploading documents, there's a number of formats that are acceptable. You know, PDF, Word, Excel, worst case scenario, a photograph, JPEG. But you know, most of the kind of mainstream formats are fine. But you know, PDF, Word, Excel, or a picture is good. And then finally, before we kind of get to wrapping this little guided tour up. Going back to the personal statement aspect here, you'll also be asked to upload some identification. We live in a world now where everybody has to be ID'd, so you need to be able to provide 2 separate forms of identification, so passport, driving licence, recent utility bill from home address, those sorts of things. But again, you know, getting those captured into a digital format and uploaded to the personal statement part of the BLS site is something to look out for. And so just to kind of pull the final strands of this together, maybe worth just sharing some little tips, particularly in areas of what not to do. As I already alluded to earlier, make sure this is your business plan. Don't just have something knocked up on your behalf by someone else. This is your plan and it's a plan that you're in ownership of. Next, make sure that when you are preparing your financial projections that we're not, as I said earlier, saying that we're going to do £30,000 of sales every month for every year and that we're going to have £15,000 of cost every month, every year. We need to show the variances within those figures and be able to explain the assumptions that lie behind those figures. Of course, an important one, first and foremost for you as well as BLS, is does this pass the sense test? When you look at these numbers, do you believe these figures? Do they make sense to you, and therefore will they make sense to someone who's casting a critical but friendly eye over your numbers? And a final thing is, I guess, get the preparation right, do the homework, get yourself fit and ready to make this application. We don't want it to drag on forever. We want to get a good application presented to BLS in good time. And so, in summary, I guess a good application to BLS is an application that is your plan, that's articulated well, that tells the story of the business, that presents logical financial information supported by some easily understood assumptions and presented well. It's as simple as that. So it's not, as I said at the beginning, this is not a process that needs to become cumbersome. It's very user-friendly, and you'll find once you get into the process, guided through by the BLS website, it'll be fairly straightforward. And all I guess it remains for me to say is all the best with your businesses, and if you are looking to apply to BLS, best of luck.